Hey, snacks, welcome back. Thanks for joining me for some more Reddit stories. Look, yeah, today's ones are interesting. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. By the way, thank you for the warm welcomes, as well as the helpful critiques. Some of my recordings have already been done, but I assure you, I've taken your notes on board and I'm applying them to the newest work I'm doing. We now go over to Am I Overreacting? With this creepy story from Pista the Cat. Am I overreacting, or did the security guard of my accommodation cross a line? Now this post comes with this image that's highlighting a certain message. We'll find out more details in the story itself, but the message says, "You need to get your schmidt together and answer people's concerns. It's very selfish." The story starts, "So for context, I moved into this student accommodation 4 years ago where I met John, 65 male. He is a very sweet, lovely old man, and we became friends very fast, often sitting together when he was on shift to talk about random stuff or life updates. He was friendly with other students in the building, and they would also love to come and sit with him to talk. And it was overall wholesome. I left the building after the first year and came back last year, but I maintained contact and would come by to say hello here and there. Then things became a bit odd recently. There are 3 main things. 1, I turned my phone off for a bit as I was having a mental health decline, and when I turned it back on, I saw he sent me this message attached at 1 a.m., which is the message we saw earlier. It made me a bit upset because of the phrasing, but I understood he was concerned, so I brushed it off. 2, this is where I think he did something quite inappropriate. He had been asking my friends in the building about me, and if they have heard from me, and to one of them, he said, 'Oh, have you heard from X recently?' To which my friend said no. He then asked her if she knew what happened to me last year. Context, essay, and a court case. She said yes, and then he went on to say, 'I don't know how OP gets herself into these situations where she falls asleep and wakes up with a man on top of her.' I was shocked to hear this, to say the least, and my friend said she felt the victim blaming was disgusting. She ended the conversation quickly and left and informed me about it when we saw each other next. 3, this part is where I'm a bit confused. When I returned to my accommodation at one point after being with family, I was leaving my kitchen and saw him in my flat corridor, which he has the key to access to, and also all rooms in the building. He had his key in my door, and when he saw me, he pulled it out and asked me if I was okay. This was the first time he saw me since the text message and since I had returned to the building. I said yes, and he said, 'Okay, glad to hear, and you know where I am if you need me.' I was quite confused if he was in my bedroom or not, but also, why? Would this be considered a welfare check? I informed my support worker about this today, and she became very concerned, and then said she will have to speak to someone about this. But I am not sure if I am overreacting, or if this behavior is truly inappropriate. I understand his comment was out of line, but I fear I am putting his job at risk here. Bigger support at the time says, not overreacting here. He is seriously crossing some boundaries in terms of his job role. He is a security guard, and you owe him no explanations as to your whereabouts. And the comments he's made about you are creepy. I'd consider reporting this to your building, honestly. He is security after all, not hearing from her for ages. It is kind of in his job description to do something like a welfare check. If not as a security guard, then as a friend. But of course, he is a security guard first and foremost. That, along with the weird message, along with the weird judgment of her character. I mean, we have some comments that would try to defend him slightly, that he has keys to all the doors, so it's probably within his authority to open them if there's a reason for concern. He might have assumed there was a reason for concern when she didn't respond to texts for a long time, and her friend also didn't know where she was. Especially considering he's a victim-blaming boomer who thinks women get themselves into trouble. So let me know what you think. And then, with that thought, join me for the update that arrived today, just 2 weeks after the original post. So my support worker and myself reported the issue to the building managers, and they took it very seriously. The man was immediately suspended, and I have been told from others that he was fired, but the building managers confirmed he will not be returning. I spoke to a friend about this, and he informed me that this has happened to others before, i.e. entering their bedrooms without permission, but no one thought it was strange or thought to report it. This friend also told me that he spoke to the security guard recently, and he claimed he's retiring? I don't believe this, and to be honest, don't really care what he states. I also thought I'd make it clear why I posted here in the first place. When I initially spoke to people about the situation, I was told it was out of care or concern rather than inappropriate behavior, and that it wasn't anything to take too seriously. I guess I went on to gaslight myself into thinking it was this too, and that he was just an innocent, caring man who was concerned about my mental health. But after reading comments, it became clear he crossed the duty of care and was inappropriate. I don't know how else to explain, but I am still young, 22 female, and maybe I misread the situation, but after coming here, it was obvious that it was predatory behavior. I spoke to my mom about it too, and she also said maybe it was out of care, but it was not good, and she's glad he's not returning. They knew each other. Finally, I have no more contact with this man and do not intend to. I do feel bad he lost his job, but I completely understand that it was out of order and should have never happened. I miss my friend, but I am learning to set my boundaries and respect them. Yeah, end of the day, you can have good intentions and innocent ones when doing things like this, but we have protocols for this stuff for a reason. I work in kid shows and occasionally with kids, and I need a certain card that verifies I've been checked and I'm responsible and safe around children. It's tedious and annoying as hell, especially when I've unofficially worked around these same kids for ages, but I understand it's there for a reason. And despite my points earlier about how he could have just been caring as a friend, well, he could have conveyed that a lot more respectfully in his text messages. The fact he didn't, I think, says all we need to hear. So good on OP for shaking away the gaslighting feelings and just standing up for themselves. Now, this story was submitted in relationship advice by a username GarageFuzzy4367. I'm 42 female. My husband, 42 male, has informed me he intends to go on a gaycation with his brother-in-law, who's 35 male, in Ibiza. How do I handle this? Hi there. I really wish I didn't have to make this post, but here goes. So, me and my husband have been happily married for about 16 years, give or take. We both have stable careers, good family life, and are fairly fortunate despite the cost of living racking the UK right now. We have 2 boys, 15 and 10, and up until this Sunday, thought we had it pretty good. We argue sometimes, of course, but never gotten too bad, and we have a pretty decent intimate life with some exploration, but I won't get into that. Long and short is, on Sunday, just after I dropped our boys off at their friends', my husband asked me if we had the house alone, and more importantly, do I have a minute? I said yes, and he sat me down and then got out this printed poster for some sort of orgy and started explaining to me the concept of a gaycation, how it's where straight men go to somewhere with sun, sand, and booze and become gay for the duration of the trip. But that's fine, because it doesn't actually count, because what happens on the gaycation stays on the gaycation. I was just completely silent and mortified, even more so when he said he was looking into booking a trip to Ibiza next year with his brother-in-law, his sister's husband, to experience it for himself. When he finally let me speak, I just said, I need him to be clear with me. Is he gay? Because if yes, that's okay, but we need to figure out what happens going forward. I didn't let myself get angry or upset. I was just stunned. He swore up and down how he's not gay and he's 100% attracted to women and of course still loves me and our boys. So I said, well, do you think you're bi, maybe? And he got very defensive, saying how I need to drop the accusations and that this is the beauty of a gaycation. It allows straight men to experience gayness without actually being gay, and how it's like going to an aquarium? And again, he was adamant he doesn't find men's bodies or genitalia exciting at all. But he needs to experience this, apparently. I said, well, I'm really not comfortable, because even if he was bi, this would be explicitly cheating on me. And he got angry and reiterated he's not, because that's the beauty of the gaycation, etc. I just had enough and left the room. I ignored him for the rest of the day, but we spoke at tea where I again asked him, why does he want to do this so bad if he's not gay? He said how he's interested in how gay men's lives differ to straight men's, and that unfortunately, once the gaycation begins, it's simply impossible for a man to resist, and he must surrender himself, mind, body, and soul, to the gaycation or be destroyed. I really can't put into words how surreal it was, because he was speaking so matter-of-factly, and he, again, insists this is a thing that straight men do all the time, and how he's actually doing it a bit late. I just said to him, if he has any love for me, then he can't go ahead with this, and if he does, the marriage will be dead. We didn't speak any more after that. Since then, he's mentioned no more of it, but somehow, and this is what scares me a lot too, that decision genuinely seems to be tearing him up. He didn't go into work on Monday, and only went in half a day yesterday because he told them he just felt too ill, and he just looks distraught every time I see him. I really don't think he's wholly gay, though. I can absolutely believe he's bi, but I'd rather we talked about that in a healthy way rather than this incredibly weird denialism about going on a sex holiday to Ibiza. Has anyone known straight guys to do this and come back and just go back to being straight? Like, surely that can't be a thing that happens. I'm so out of my depth here, and I just don't know how to even initiate the conversation. For the record, I also haven't mentioned it to his sister yet. I don't know how I'd even break it to her. Thanks for any help. I just don't even want to think, so being able to get this out there has helped even just a little bit. Comments are quite on the ball with this one. Your husband isn't proposing a gaycation. He's proposing cheating on you with men while using magical thinking to pretend it doesn't count. The fact that he's planning this with his sister's husband makes it even more disturbing. His bizarre explanation about surrendering mind, body, and soul isn't straight man curiosity. It's someone desperately trying to justify exploring his sexuality while keeping his heterosexual marriage. His depression about not being able to go isn't about missing a vacation. It's about being forced to confront his sexuality without his convenient "what happens in Ibiza stays in Ibiza" excuse. His meltdown over not going shows how desperately he wants to avoid facing this reality. Someone who's definitely not a troll thinks, "You're the a-hole. Gaycation is a sacred right. Husband did nothing wrong." With most of the other comments, clearly not caring to give some advice, just want to bring some popcorn and see it all burst into flames. Others honestly wouldn't be surprised if he's already on Grindr meeting up with men anyway. And look, as a straight man who's explored very, very vanilla levels of bi-curiosity and is very comfortably straight, I can get needing to be certain about something. But you don't do that by spending thousands into a vacation overseas. You do that going on an app or meeting someone who might be able to introduce you to that circuit of interests. If you plan to go on a gaycation, you're already well aware of what you want. Just be honest with it. But okay, we get an edit from OP before the update. They say, "Wow, this blew up. This has been incredibly sobering, and I think I've now confirmed what I already knew to be the case. The marriage is dead, one way or another." In a way, I was in denial myself about that. I have contacted my sister-in-law, and she initially screamed at me, calling me a liar, and even insinuated I was trying to steal her husband. She rang me back shortly after, apologized, and admitted she was in deep, deep shock. I have asked my parents to look after the boys, and we're going to meet tomorrow to discuss this deeper. I have also texted my husband and told him he will need to make alternative accommodation arrangements, but he will not be sleeping here tonight, and a bag will be waiting for him. Not sure if the mods want to lock the post or not, but I think I've got my answers. Thank you for all the kind words, especially Champion Flight, who really gave me the good dose of reality I needed. Now, thankfully, but also sadly, it wasn't long until we got an update, just a day later. So when I last posted, I'd contacted my husband to tell him he wouldn't be staying at home tonight and a bag would be waiting for him. As you can imagine, we argued quite badly. I won't go into the specific details, but no, I'm 100% on board with the fact, at a minimum, he's bi, might even be gay altogether. We've had arguments in the past, but I've genuinely never seen him have such a childish tantrum before, screaming about how I just don't understand the gaycation. Absolutely despise that phrase now. And insinuating I'm actually homophobic because I refuse to allow him to participate in this cultural exchange with the gay community. A lot of you said to ask him if it'd be acceptable if the roles were in reverse, and I did say it would be acceptable if I went and slept with other guys during that week. And like freaking clockwork, he was very angry and offended, saying it's completely different because a gaycation means nothing. And what happens on the gaycation stays on the gaycation, etc., so doesn't actually account. whereas I'd just be straight up cheating. Well, I turned it around on him. No, but you see, what happens in Manchester stays in Manchester. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't count. It's like bird watching. And I think it got through to him. He went all quiet and then started crying, admitting the thought of me sleeping with another man is destroying his heart, but relationships need sacrifices. So he agreed, while in tears, that when he goes on the gaycation, I'll get 1 week in Manchester to do whatever I want. He doesn't want me to, but that's fair in a twisted way, he supposed. I told him to get out of my house. Thankfully, he left without a fight. I know it's incredibly petty, but I also drained the joint bank account, which is legal in the UK, so he couldn't try to use it against me. About an hour later, I got rung up by his mum, my mother-in-law, who just screamed and screamed at me about being a cheating whore, how I was horrible, what about the kids, etc. When I finally got my composure back, I just said, ask your son about the gaycation. Obviously, at first she got angry, but I said, no, just ask him about the gaycation. He'll explain, but she called me a freaking joke and hung up. Later on, getting into the evening, I got another phone call from her, floods of tears. She was very apologetic, and I told her she doesn't need to be the one to apologize. She was so upset, she put father-in-law on the phone, who, while he sounded calm, I could just sort of tell he was on the warpath. Again, very apologetic, and said he overheard that phrase, asked my husband, and husband initially said, no, it's nothing, before explaining how it's a modern thing men do, etc., and gave them the same spiel about how what happens on the gaycation, men cannot resist the gaycation, how a man must surrender to the gaycation, etc. Father-in-law just said they told him to leave or they'd call the police. Don't care where he goes, but he wasn't staying there. Husband tried to call me while I was on the phone, but I just ignored it. And father-in-law just said he was so sorry for me, and they have my corner in this, so that's one thing. Told them to be there for their daughter, because it sounds like brother-in-law is involved. Husband didn't tell them that. And father-in-law just said he had to go because he was so angry. Got a text from my husband after the phone call, which was all weirdly rambly, saying about how I'd abused the gaycation to destroy his marriage and destroy his life, and again insinuated I, and his parents, were homophobic for doing such a thing. I told him we'll talk when he grows up, and I blocked his number. I took a day off of work for myself to have the locks changed this morning, so that's £500 gone, but whatever. At least I know he won't be coming back. I'm going to look into how to proceed with a divorce, and then we'll move from there. Oh, of course, there's also the brother-in-law. So I haven't yet met with sister-in-law. She was in such a state and has taken this far worse than I have for reasons that'll be clear soon. We're going to maybe try tomorrow, but we did talk over the phone, and I eavesdropped on the conversation with her husband where she put her phone on speaker, and I went on mute. Her husband got home earlier. She made him come home, told him there was an emergency, and just said to him, "Can you please explain what a gaycation is?" She told me afterwards she was praying he'd looked confused or just be like, "What?" or anything like that. But instead, he just sat her down and explained that a gaycation is a new thing where straight men go to gay hotspots and participate in gay sex acts, but it doesn't count because there's no investment, and because what happens on the gaycation stays on the gaycation. He said it's like writing down angry thoughts and putting them in a drawer. You never have to see them again. The whole time, sister-in-law is in tears as he just calmly bats off the same points my husband did about how it doesn't count, and even he did the whole "it's impossible to resist, you must surrender or be destroyed" stuff. I seriously think they must be speaking to a dominatrix or something. Are there even male doms? Because surely neither of them are that into this to actually make that up on their own. I really don't want to go into what was discussed for her sake, but it did become very apparent to me that the brother-in-law is into sissy hypno play, and at times conflated that with the concept of a gaycation. There was this utterly surreal moment where sister-in-law is just trying to wrap her head around this while also in floods of tears, and he explains so genuinely, so matter-of-factly, that for most men, the gaycation is either a one-time or annual thing, but some men go on the gaycation for years, and others simply never return, because they use hypnosis and mind control to be totally feminized into a state of permanent pseudo-gayness. She said in disbelief, "Surely if you're taking it up the backside willingly because you want to, that makes you gay." And he said, "No, because that's the beauty of the gaycation. You can do all this gay stuff, but you don't interact with the wider gay life experience." She asked him if the sissy stuff is what he wanted, and he said, "Not on a long-term basis," and was adamant this is something all straight men do, but she wouldn't get it because she's a woman. Then there were more insinuations of homophobia. Well, that marriage is dead too, I suppose. The whole ordeal ended when she said to him he has a choice to make, and he said, "No, he doesn't need to make this choice because the beauty of the gaycation is that it allows him to keep his marriage because it doesn't count." She said, "That's not the choice. The choice is whether he's leaving the house that night or she is." Only good thing he did was leave. Me and sister-in-law spoke about it after that, and I'm just still utterly stunned. I understand she's gone to her parents for the support, but what exactly did we do to have our lives destroyed in such an abrupt, bizarre, embarrassing way? Per some advice, I'm going to look at devices and bank statements to see if I can find any definitive proof of cheating. After that, I suppose, figure out how I tell the boys why their father won't be coming home. Now, what's great is that there actually are some people in the comments who are experienced in these gaycations. Gay here. Older now and don't go to the gay resorts anymore. Something my husband and I just aren't interested in anymore. When I did go, it surprised me how many guys were straight. Tried explaining to one guy as I was inside him that if he's taking it in the backside from a guy, he's gay. That didn't go over very well. I'm sorry, what? I feel, if anything, that's just so much further insulting to gay people in general. Because for these straight men, they're the ones that are homophobes here. Because they won't acknowledge it as a legitimate sexuality. They just think it's like a little seasoning onto your white bread. This, for me, feels the equivalent of someone slapping you and them saying, "I'm not hurting you. I'm just exploring kinetic movement. How dare you accuse me of being a violent person?" I don't know, gang. I think I need a moment before I read the next stories after this one. No, this has got to be a cult thing. Okay, sorry, this is Editor Jack while he was editing and listening back to the story. The way these men just repeated these lines, like as if they were part of some sort of Tate incel group. It just, gang, am I crazy to think this? This genuinely feels like they've been warped mentally through the content they've watched online, and now it's just resulted in this. I don't know. I don't know. This has melted my brain. How would they not just buy at very least? Oh, okay. My husband's friend, 42 male, kissed me, 33 female. Shall I tell my husband? I don't know what to do. This has been playing on my mind since it happened Saturday night. I don't know if he just got carried away with himself. Our sons play football together Saturday and Sunday. We spend most of our weekend with the rest of the parents on the team as a group. Anyway, one of the mums had a party. We'd all been drinking and dancing and what you do at parties. I said I needed to get some cigarettes. He said he'd walk with me, and we were just walking and talking about random things, having a laugh, nothing inappropriate. But just as we got around the corner on the way back, he stopped and said that he had to say something to me. He said, "You're so amazing and beautiful." I laughed awkwardly and said, "Oh, thanks. You're amazing too. I'm glad we're friends." But before I knew what was happening, he grabbed me around the waist and kissed me. I didn't kiss him back, I just kind of froze. When he realized I didn't kiss him back, he started to apologize and said he thought I was attracted to him as well. I told him he can't do that, we're both married, and I'm very much in love with my husband. He had a beautiful, thoughtful wife, he shouldn't be doing things like that. Him and his wife have only recently gotten married, so she's such a lovely woman. I don't want to be the cause of any problems in their marriage so early on. And I just don't like drama. He said sorry again, and I told him we just forget it had happened, he'd had too much to drink, and he made a mistake. Just don't make the same mistake again. I didn't tell my husband because, again, I didn't want to cause a problem. It would blow our entire friendship group apart, and the kids genuinely love each other and want to spend all their time together. However, I can't help but feel guilty for not telling my husband. We don't lie to each other. And I realize I'm not lying, I've just not told him what's happened. I want to, but I'm scared of what will happen. And how he will react, not towards me, but his friend. He knows I would never cheat. We've been together 18 years, high school sweethearts. It never has been anybody but him. I'm starting to question my behavior, trying to think back. I'd said to make him think I'd want him to kiss me? So, top comments at the time, you should tell your husband. This person was supposed to be a friend, but he completely disregarded your marriage. I get not wanting to upset your kids, but this is your marriage. You need to tell your husband. Nothing good will come from hiding this. And yeah, it seems this is something that's mutually shared amongst the group. Peanut Gallery, quite an unanimous belief that OP should absolutely be telling their husband about this thing. That the longer you wait, the worse it's gonna be. Tell him now, or trust is lost and minimal at worst and 0% lost at best. A few days later? I mean, you're clearly leaving him to suspect if maybe you were trying to hide this in the first place. I mean, I feel like that's with any situation. The moment you are in a position where someone could accuse you of doing something in that moment that you definitely didn't do, you should have your ducks in a row. If that's the saying. Is that the saying? Get your ducks, man. But then you have people, props to this person for completely ignoring anything else in the story. The only real problem your story presents is that you should quit smoking. Why worry about someone else's one-time bad behavior when you're intentionally shortening your life every day? Your friend tried to initiate an affair between you two, but you smoke, so bygones be bygones. With all that said, Opie comes back in an edit. I'm going to tell my husband tonight. I know it may seem like a stupid question to ask, but I was confused and overwhelmed by the situation. I've realized I've also made a mistake, but there was no way I was going to tell my husband who was drunk. For the people suggesting I liked what he did, or did I secretly want the attention, I get plenty of attention from my husband. I don't need any from anybody else. We have a happy, healthy, secure marriage. It's easy for people telling me I should have told him immediately. I froze. I didn't know what to do. I never expected him to do that, ever. He trusts this man with his life. They served in the army together. When he was away, his friend helped with our son, did any manly things that needed doing, whilst we lived on base, because we were so far from family at the time. My dad is a serial cheater. I've watched him ruin several lives growing up, and my husband knows how against cheating I am. I've watched my dad's actions implode our family. I would never cheat. I made a choice at the time, admittedly, a bad one. Now, there is no timestamp, but there is an update that seems to be within 24 hours. Lots of you have been asking for an update. I had to sleep, sort our kids out so we could talk properly. I asked my mom to have the kids over night. I told her what happened. She said I hadn't done anything, just to be honest with my husband. She was upset that this friend had done that to me and had put me in that position. Firstly, I would like to say all the people who are calling me names and saying I've betrayed my husband by not telling him immediately, what good would have come of that? We had all been drinking alcohol, the kids were there, there's a time and a place for everything, and that was not it. Not everything is black and white, and to some of you, it might have been okay with causing a scene. I was not. I wasn't trying to protect him. I was trying to protect my family. In regards to people saying my friends are more important than my marriage, it's simply not true. My husband came in from work. I'd cooked us dinner. We sat down to eat. I told him my mom had wanted the kids for a sleepover. Looked upset when he came in from work. I nearly changed my mind and didn't tell him. I said I had to speak to him. He said he had to speak to me, but he said I was to go first. Told him what happened. He came and gave me a cuddle and told me he already knew. Apparently, his friend had called him today and said he could meet up with him. He admitted to screwing up, and he felt like a piece of schmidt for doing that to me. My husband said he was so angry. They were in a pub, so he just got up and walked away. He said he doesn't know if he can ever forgive him for what he's done. He apologized to me and said he was sorry for trusting his friend, and he should been the one walking with me. He said I hadn't done anything wrong, and he wasn't angry with me for not telling him straight away. I should have been the one apologizing, but this beautiful man understood. He said he knows how much I hate confrontation
confrontation. He knows I have to think things through in my own mind before I can talk about it. He's currently showering, so I thought I'd write a quick update, and I just want to move on from this now. His friend has texted him to say he'll stay away for a few weeks, as he knows he's made me feel uncomfortable. We're going to have an early night and just enjoy some alone time without the kids. Thank you so much to all the people who understood where I was coming from. Even some of the harsher comments helped me out. I don't think my plan was ever to not tell him. I was just worried. And look, with the husband's additional comments on her behavior, I can understand why Opie was being like that. This one comes with a recent update today. How or when do I, 21 female, tell my boyfriend, 22 male, that I'm getting surgery? For some context, we have been dating for over 3 years and have had our fair share of issues. One of my main issues recently has to do with his moral and political views, and because of them, I'm not sure how to approach this, or if I should at all. I told my boyfriend last summer that I would get a tubal ligation if the election turned out the way it did. So that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm not only doing it only because of that, I've wanted to for years. I'm just saying this because I did tell him then, so technically it wouldn't be a total surprise when I did go ahead with it. I stopped bringing it up after that because he suddenly started to get weird about it. Plus, he doesn't seem to like it when I talk about anything regarding women's healthcare. However, he brought it up during an argument, saying how I wanted to get mutilated. After that, I tried to see his perspective on it, so I asked why he was so against it. He only gave me non-answers, so I'm still not really sure what the reasoning is. My fear is that he expects biological children and just doesn't want to say it. I told him about my stance very, very early on, and that I would never have bio kids. He was okay with it then, and says he is now, but I don't see any other reason as to why he would have a problem with the surgery. He was completely fine with never having kids up until fall of last year. Now his stance is adoption, supposedly. I am scheduled to have surgery in a little over 2 weeks. I didn't tell him as I was trying to get approved for it, because I wasn't sure if I would be rejected for being too young. However, it is definitely happening now, and I don't know if or when I should tell him. I'm afraid that if I tell him before, that he will make me feel bad or try to convince me out of it, but I also don't want to leave him in the dark and just do it. I'd really like some perspective on this, because I don't know. Thoughts from the gallery? Do not be with somebody you can't have an honest conversation with. Opposites do not attract. There are millions of other men out there and tens of thousands that can be a better match inside with you and actually want to talk women's health. Just gotta hold out to find them. Counter opinions say, I'm the same age as OP and having such a major surgery over election results seems really crazy to me, especially when we know this is for 4 years. If I'd be so worried about my reproductive rights, I'd just abstain from intercourse for 4 years, which sounds like a long time, but god damn it, it's preferable than to mess up with fragile, complex systems that I might need later to work as well as it can. Now again, despite the story making it clear that that wasn't the only reason Opie was doing this, Opie decides to give more information in the comments. I have very immense physical and mental issues. My chronic pains will never mix with pregnancy. No amount of people telling me that I will totally want it one day will ever change the fact that it's not a safe option for me in any capacity. Now, naturally on the internet, when a woman makes a choice about something, people respect those choices. There are ways to not have children that don't involve having your tubes tied. Condoms, for instance. There's also birth control that lasts 4 to 10 years, so it's not as permanent or a decision as the one she plans to make. There are, in my opinion, more reasonable actions to take in response to this election or the current climate than a nearly irreversible procedure. Again, I just find it very entertaining that these people are all completely ignoring the fact that for this person, to be pregnant would be immensely painful and suffering. It's one thing if she wanted to have kids regardless, but we're not in a state of population collapse, people. It's okay if 1 or 2 women out there don't want to have kids. Other comments say that this is not something you should hide from your partner. For better or for worse, he has to know, and you two have to decide if you can move on from there, or if you need to go your separate ways. The longer you keep it from him, the more it will feel like it is some type of betrayal. Secrets kill relationships. Should be important to add as well that the boyfriend might just be genuinely concerned for her health and safety when getting the surgery. I am a dude, and even I am aware of how complicated women's bodies are for the medical industry, to the fact that there are so many necessary funds and institutions that are about researching and trying to figure out women's health. For some people, these surgeries can alleviate serious pain. For others, they can cause further risks. But ultimately, with the boyfriend hinting that they'd still want to have kids one day, and Opie making it clear they definitely don't want to have kids, it did seem at the time that this was definitely a failing relationship. So, what came about in the update just a few hours ago? I figured I'd make an update since there were a lot of very supportive and kind people on my original post. I really appreciated those who were kind and had shared their own similar experiences. I hope y'all are doing wonderful. For those who didn't give advice and had issues with my choice, I don't care. No words will undo my surgery. I also lied about ages. Take that as you will. So main updates. I had surgery. I also told him before the surgery. Okay, so I didn't just outright tell him. I tested the waters beforehand. He genuinely did not care. Like, at all. Which made me very confused with the mutilation comment. He didn't seem to have many questions or concerns compared to my friends that I had told, which seemed kinda weird to me. Otherwise, though, he has been acting completely normal. I haven't seen him since the surgery. I was at my friend's house until today. So, unsure as to how he feels about it now, but he's been fine over calls and texts. As far as surgery goes, I'm recovering fine. Hasn't been too horrible yet. It also turns out I was kinda naturally infertile. I won't go too into it, but it's highly unlikely I would have been able to have a full-term or live pregnancy, a pre-tubal ligation. So, that's interesting. Now, you'd think the comments would be overjoyed by the happy ending of sorts, but nope. Fartmaster Champ here wondering why you still haven't dumped the misogynistic a-hole. Which, yeah, it does leave me questioning just how things are ending here. Opie assures us this guy is fine, but he could be acting normal over the calls and texts because he's already planning on leaving you. On the other hand, maybe there was just a slight moment of panic he had at first, but now he's sort of realized that you were someone capable of being aware of this situation yourself and you're not some immature person making a blind decision. I don't know, I just feel like assuming he's a misogynist just because he made the mutilation comment and theoretically has some political views she doesn't fully agree with. Bit of a jump to think he believes her as a second-class citizen who isn't capable of mature, autonomous thought. And now for a tale from Shadow XO8414. Am I the a-hole for throwing a slight tantrum after my mom made me pay for something for my sister? I, 17 female, have been working hard for 3 weeks collecting cans and bottles to sell for money for my graduate night trip. Today, I finally went with my mom to sell all the bottles, not the cans, that I've collected. And for my effort, I got $23 whole just for me. My mom, who's 53 female, also sold the bottles she's collected. This will be important later. Now, after selling all the bottles, we went to pick my youngest sister, who's a year younger than me, from school. 16 female. She had $20 and wanted to buy the new Hunger Games book that just came out this day, March 18th. So we went to the closest Barnes & Noble and she got the book Sunrise on the Reaping. But it was $30 and she only had $20. I didn't notice and wasn't paying attention. I was busy playing with a cute bunny toy when my mom called my name, and I was so confused. See, my mom had gotten $26 from the bottles and cans she sold, so she had money, and yet asked me to help my sister pay for the book. Now, normally I wouldn't mind, but I had spent 3 weeks going to my teachers and taking their bottles, picking the bottles from the streets in front of people. I have severe social anxiety, but I bared through it all for the money. And yet here my mom was telling me to give my hard-earned cash to my sister so that she could buy the book. I tried to protest, but she wasn't having it. I was devastated. I didn't want to hand over my money. After a small and short accidental tantrum, eventually we reached an agreement that she would pay me back the money. It still hurt, but whatever. At least I would get my money back. But now she's mad at me for embarrassing her. I understand her, I really do. I am 17 after all, but she isn't considering how embarrassed I was. And it isn't considerate of my feelings. So, am I the a-hole? Now, I know some of us might think, hey, it's just $23, no big deal, but let's consider the perspective of this 17-year-old. For them, this was their first entrepreneurial, sort of self-made pursuit. That $23 to her means a lot more than just its monetary value. It's also evidence of her work ethic, especially to battle her personal demons like her social anxiety. So naturally, the biggest support at the time, say, Nata. You are working hard toward a goal that is a once-in-your-life event. Your sister probably worked hard to save for the book, but it will still be there even 2 years from now. She could even wait for a free copy from the library. I assume your mom had necessary purchases to make, food and bills, with the money she collected, and that's why she wasn't able to help your sister. As much as it sucks for her, your sister should have been asked to wait until either your mom had the money to give her, or she'd earned the rest herself. And many share this sentiment, saying that this is one of those cases where if you're someone who's that poor, you should really just prioritize online purchases instead of trying to support local businesses. Also, we should consider the fact the mom's situation here. If she is collecting cans for spare change, it seems like this was mother's desperate attempt to try and give some sort of light to their kids' lives, you know? So, okay, where do you stand with this? You probably think not the a-hole, maybe. But allow me to throw a theoretical spanner in the works thanks to the comments left by OP. So one comment asked, how long was it until she paid you back? Did she have her cash on her, or had she left it in the car? To which the OP implies, I don't know if it was on purpose or on accident, but she left the cash in the car, so my mom paid me back after we left the store. Which, then she didn't take any money from you, she gave it back to you a few minutes later. You're not out of anything, you didn't lose anything. Opie responds, she didn't give it back, she just replaced it. Which, yes, that's what you do with money. But again, I know it's something we might want to scoff at with their reaction to this. Again though, to OP, this was something very meaningful to them. This $23 wasn't just money, it was a symbol of their own personal individualism, their independence that, of all people, is being denied by their own mother. But OP eventually gives an update in this story. For anyone who was curious or just wanted to know, I wasn't kicking and screaming, yelling, it's not fair. I was standing with my mouth wide open in shock while telling my mom no. Also, my sister is innocent in this. She didn't know what was going to happen. And my mom does this thing where as long as you cover the majority of the cost, or you pay her back, she will help cover the rest. So please, no hate for my sister. Now I know we might want to say that doesn't really absolve the OP's reaction in all this, but let's also take note of the fact that OP had no idea that she was going to get paid back straight away. Especially from a mother who is also collecting cans to try and get money. While we might want to bag an OP for their overreaction, in those immediate circumstances, I too would have assumed I was never going to get my money back. Well, friends, that's the end of today's video. Thank you for making it this far. If you did, give yourself a cookie. You deserve it. Hope to see you next time. Until then, you be good, and I love your face. Until then,